officially open this event and to share his own insights into today's event, Shifting the Dial. Let's now make welcome the Minister for Education, the Honourable Chris Hipkins, who's joining us online. E te minita, tēnā koe.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou, and it is great to be able to be with you this morning, albeit virtually, something that we've all gotten a lot more used to over the last few years. So thank you for the opportunity to participate in a really important discussion around how we can better serve underserved learners in Aotearoa. I really commend you all for being involved in this discussion, and I really appreciate the hard work that you're all doing to support our ākonga to participate and thrive in the tertiary education system. Can I echo Julian's acknowledgement of Up Education and Mark Rushworth, the Chief Executive, who they've invited me to provide these opening remarks and for kicking off a really important conversation. So I want to thank and acknowledge Up Education and NZIER for producing the white paper and the research that's the topic of the discussions that you're going to be having today. At the risk of starting with a cliche, I really do believe that education is the key to unlocking the success, opportunity and fulfilment that communities throughout Aotearoa deserve. Education underpins all of the goals that we have for New Zealand's future and the vision that we share for all of the people of New Zealand. So we really support the kaupapa of the report. Education is and is going to remain a real priority for us. The government is committed to a long-term positive transformation in the education system to improve the outcome and the experience of all of our learners. We want to acknowledge that the education system hasn't always served all of our learners equally. Māori and Pacific learners, learners with disabilities, they're disproportionately represented as underserved learners, and we've got to do better there. So we've got to share an absolute commitment to making the education system much more equitable and much more accessible for all of our learners. Many of the issues raised in the report have been key drivers behind the work that the government's currently undertaking to improve the educational success outcomes of underserved learners. And you'll see that in the tertiary education strategy, which sets out our key long-term objectives for the success of all of our learners, including placing learners and their families at the centre of education and ensuring that great educational opportunities and outcomes are within reach for every learner. The tertiary education strategy calls on providers to have high aspirations for all of their learners and to respond to their specific needs and to help them to achieve. From the 1st of January this year, the new Code of Pastoral Care sets out the expectations for the well-being and safety of all tertiary learners, including those who our education system hasn't served well in the past. The code sets out that learners should be centrally involved in developing and reviewing well-being and safety strategic goals and plans at every tertiary education organisation, ensuring that tertiary education spaces are culturally safe and accessible for all of our learners. As I'm out and about around the country, one of the things that I'm regularly asked is, why are you placing such a high emphasis on well-being? Surely the ultimate goal of education is achievement. And actually those two things go hand in glove. Ultimately, people sort of would argue that if you deal, and I get this argument all the time, if you deal with achievement, if people are achieving in education, then they're much better positioned to take care of their own well-being, particularly in the future. And so that the argument goes that, focus on achievement and the well-being takes care of itself. Actually, I'd reverse the argument and say if you focus on the learner well-being, then the road to achievement is that much smoother for all of those learners. When we did the hui that we held early on in our tenure in government, we asked underserved learners what they thought about the education system. And it was really, really stark, the comments that they gave us. It was things like they didn't think that the education system cared about them. They didn't think the education system was a place where they were welcome, where they felt that they were respected based on their culture, based on their abilities, based on a whole lot of other factors. They felt that the system discriminated against them. We've got to do better there. So we want to continue to strive for that improvement. We want to continue with our partnership approach. So the Ministry of Education in the tertiary space will continue to partner with Taumata Aranui, for example, Taumata Aranui is an independent reference group of Māori experts, and they're providing the expertise to help us design an indigenously inspired tertiary education system that drives increased responsiveness and improved outcomes for our Māori learners in their communities. And they're soon going to be releasing their think piece, Maku Kokiri, which is a document that brings together their shared priorities and their aspirations for Māori success in tertiary education. The reforms of vocational education are well underway, aiming to deliver to the unique needs of all of our learners, including those who have traditionally been underserved by the vocational education system. As part of ROVE, the learner component of the unified funding system is going to substantially increase funding to providers that's targeted to supporting all learners. The learner component funding will be calculated based on enrolments of learners with low prior achievement, those including our disabled learners, those in our Māori and Pacific communities. The Ministry of Education, working with the Tertiary Education Commission, is also looking at how foundation tertiary education can be improved. So as you'll be aware, many school leavers do not do well at school and they return to the education system later on in life in a tertiary setting. And we've got some evidence that these foundation programs aren't meeting the objectives that we have for them. So an initial analysis shows that changes to the policy and to the operational settings have the potential to improve the outcomes of these programs, including opportunities for developing work skills and pathways into further learning. So to wrap things up, education is going to remain a big priority for our government. Our shared commitment is to ensure that all of our learners have access to quality education services that are responsive to their needs. Quality education does provide strong, lifelong foundations for learning and enables young people to contribute to their communities. Lifelong learning isn't something that we're going to be able to just continue to talk about. We're going to have to live it and breathe it. Everybody, including people who have done highly skilled jobs and have high levels of prior education, are going to need to continue to re-educate in the future as the world around us changes dramatically faster than it ever has before. And education and the responsiveness of our education system to those who the system hasn't traditionally served is going to become more important by the day. We have to have a real sense of urgency around this work. So I really commend the work being done by Up Education to make learning more accessible and engaging for our underserved learners. I sincerely thank them for their efforts in continuing this discussion on how we can better support our underserved learners in Aotearoa so that we can thrive as a nation. I wish you all the best for the remainder of the Education Forum today. I'm excited to hear what comes from today's discussion. Let's continue to work collectively to make positive change and to put learners at the heart of our education focus. So thanks for inviting me to speak to you today. Ngā mihi nui.